All right, so my first question for you is what made you want to race?
I wanted to start racing probably. So my first interest came from the Cars movie because my parents took me to see it when it came out. After that, I liked, watching it on television or on YouTube and stuff like that. And then I went to my first race when I was 12. And then from that day forward, I knew that racing is really what I wanted to do.
That sounds cool. I also got into racing from the Cars movie. Lightning McQueen is my fave. I wear my Lightning McQueen Crocs pretty much every day. Yep,
hmm
Cars and
I have,
Hornet.
yeah, I got the light up Crocs too.
Yeah. So how did you start racing, and can you talk about that process and where you are now?
So I started driving. Um, In 2017, I did like a little bit of indoor karting at the places around DC, but nothing like super organized. 20 yeah, that was 2017. In 2018, I started racing on iRacing. Um, and then I did the Ignite series, which is like a little competition that NASCAR had on there for the summer. So that's how I initially started. And then I applied for the NASCAR Drive for Diversity program and then made their youth team in 2019.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So, what is it like balancing being a full-time student and also racing?
Well, honestly, you probably know all too well of what it takes to be a full-time student. And so it's hard because you have to be all in for racing, but then also you can't like be like half-ass in school. So I think for me it's like having my priorities in order, and planning and communicating with my professors and also like with my team here at Spire Motorsports, just to make sure, that the team and my school people understand like my priorities and um really my time allowances, and honestly just learn how to say no to stuff as well.
That's very important. So, what are your goals for your career right now, and where do you see the sport going within probably the next 5 to 10 years?
I'd say my goals for my career, like I hope to be racing on Sundays, right? And that's whenever that happens, and it'd be a contender on the cup circuit for a while. I think looking big picture, I know it's important for me to pay my dues just because a lot of people have helped me get to this level. Um, so really, I think my main focus is on this current season and just trying to continue to have a good one. And then honestly, hopefully I can, like I said, continue to give back and help others like myself that weren't necessarily in the world of racing to get a chance, whether it's to drive or to be an engineer or have an administrative role with a team or work at NASCAR. So that hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. What is the biggest challenge you think you have faced while pursuing racing?
Really, the biggest challenge was getting started, just because of not having any connections, and living and growing up in DC with it being, having no real ties to get into racing. That was really the hardest part, just to get my foot in the door. Just because, like, once I got my foot in the door, like it wasn't easy by any means, but it was actually there was constructive ways to continue to get better as a driver, to build my brand. And resources to use. Whereas to start not having any roadmap, any playbook on how to make this dream work.
Can you talk more about your transition from being on a sim and iRacing to being in the actual car and what that was like?
I would say honestly, at first the transition wasn't hard because I didn't really know what was going on. I think as I developed as a driver and also as I developed as a sim racer, it became more difficult because I saw the differences and I knew at some point I could make the parallels, but like there's nothing that can prepare you for going 85 miles per hour staring at a wall, That's I think about my first experiences at big tracks, and that was a pretty eye-opening to go from, you can go fast on the game and not think twice about it, but to do it in real life is a real shell shock moment. So but I think now is, we use simulation a lot, and it's a big help because it's very similar to um how we race with our truck and car setups and the physics and aerodynamics and things of that nature.
Got it. Could you talk about being one of the only African American drivers in the NASCAR circuit and what that's like?
Um, I think for me, it is. I really cherish that because I know, being one of the few, there's a big responsibility in that, and um, I feel it's just special to me because I feel like I embody like Black history and excellence like through myself and how I carry myself as an athlete, as a sports person, and as a young man. So um, I take it in stride, and it's not really any pressure because I mean it'd be pressure if I was like fronting or acting how I'm not supposed to be or not being myself. But I really just honor that, and it's cool to have that be that representation that I needed when I was younger.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. All right, this is probably more of a controversial question, but my senior project is based around cars and racing, but also climate change and sustainability. And specifically, I want to go to college to learn how to develop technology that can be tested in racing, that can then be applied to mass market vehicles. So, do you ever see NASCAR switching to hybrid or electric cars? And just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think definitely it'll happen eventually because the whole model behind racing is race on or win on Sunday and then sell on Monday. And that's how your Toyotas, your Chevrolets, your Fords, they have that brand awareness, they have that notoriety to where they see a Silverado, they see a Camaro on the racetrack and they can go and purchase a similar vehicle. And so with how things are becoming more hybrid and electric and the electrification of vehicles and honestly just the improvement of technology, um, it's gonna happen sooner or later to NASCAR. I think we already um have gone a lot into that so far with digital cameras inside, electronic fuel injection, and how advanced the next gen car in the Cup Series is. So I think it's just a matter of time before you see hybrid engines or fully electric engines in NASCAR, or you have a specific division in NASCAR like Formula E, for example.
Got it. That's pretty cool as well. That's something that definitely is very interesting to me. Something that I think NASCAR should look into. I know that that's kind of controversial because it's been very focused on certain things for a very long time. So there hasn't been like a ton of change in the sport until very recently. But I think that that could be really interesting for the future of NASCAR. I wanted to ask you more about, what NASCAR is like, what a race day is like, and just the experience that you feel while you're in the car. What's it like to win? What's it like to compete?
Cool. Okay. So I think for one, from a fan perspective, I think the experience you get at a NASCAR track is like none other. From how festive it is, from being on the fairgrounds of a racetrack, because of like the merchandise you can get and the different tangible things you can do as a fan before even watching the race, and then actually the experience of watching a race in person is there's no way to describe it just because of how intense it is, the things you smell, what you feel in your body, what you visibly see. It's just a super exciting environment. Not to mention, I think NASCAR drivers are some of the most accessible in all of sports. I mean, you can never go to a locker room and be with NBA players or NFL players before a game, but with drivers, I mean, we're signing autographs, we're taking pictures right until we hop in the cars and trucks. So um, that's kind of what I think the fan experience is, just because I was a fan before. As a driver, so I grew up before I started racing. I grew up, playing basketball, running track, playing soccer. So I had a background in sports. So that side of things wasn't an adjustment for me when I started to race. So with that being said, like I'm a pretty fit dude and have an active lifestyle. So I always like warm up and stretch, pre-race and listen to some music. And before we even get to the racetrack, I mean, I'm gonna eat pancakes and eggs in the morning um, and that's really it. I'm a pretty plain dude, and so I try to keep those constants the same on race day, just because, uh, as I mentioned, drivers are the most accessible, so we have a lot of appearances, meet and greets, and being around fans a lot of the time. So it's important to make sure our mental is right before a race. I hope that answers all your questions. You had like 3 or 4 in that. So
Can you talk about how you felt after you won your first race this year?
I think I honestly was more in disbelief, but I was trying to take it in just because in racing compared to other sports, you lose a lot more than you win. So for one, it's important to kind of define success to yourself, aside from a finishing result, but also taking those moments because you never know when you'll win again. And so I was just trying to take it in as much as I can. I think I was a little bit too focused also on getting to the next race and trying to repeat it. And now I kind of know for next time. But also that share that experience with my parents was really cool. So and it was nice to kind of feel the respect and appreciation from or recognition from competitors that I've raced against and fellow drivers just because they know how hard it is to win.
Yeah. Can you talk about being in the playoffs this year and what that's like? And also just explaining how NASCAR playoffs work, because I know most people watching this um, aren't really big NASCAR watchers and they don't fully understand how playoffs work.
Yeah, so being in the playoffs is great because it's a guarantee that you're going to compete for a championship, and that's one of the big goals. At least in my mind, especially racing in the lower series, right? To be in a chance to compete for a championship helps you get elevated to the next level. So in racing, essentially, since you only have 36 races and the same guys and girls race every week. And so the playoffs are you have a set field of 10, 12, or 16 drivers, depending on the division, that can compete for the championship. And so you have a certain amount of races to accumulate enough points to get in that top 10 or 12 or 16. You can also get into that by winning a race. And so you get seeded based off how many wins you have and how many total points you have at the final, regular season cutoff race. In the playoffs, there's 3 different rounds, and so each round eliminates 2 to 4 drivers from championship contention. The bottom 2 or the bottom 4, just for not performing. And so you have those rounds of eliminations that are each round is at 3 different racetracks. So it really tests drivers and teams to see who's the most versatile and the most competitive. And then you have 4 drivers in each series that compete for a championship uh, at the final race in Phoenix. And so they're not on the track by themselves. They're also everybody else is still showing up in racing. It's just only 4 can win the championship. And at that race, the first of the 4 win the championship.
Thank you. I know a lot of people will appreciate that explanation because I didn't understand NASCAR playoffs until this year after watching the show on Netflix, which was also pretty cool. Um,
Definitely.
what are some areas do you think NASCAR could improve in?
I think for one, that's a loaded question because there's a lot of information that the fans have access to, and so it's like they have more of an opinion on the racing products. So I think there's a way to manage that, but also like have a real entertaining product for the fans that isn't just gimmicky and uh I think non-genuine for us as competitors and members of the sport. Um, I think a continuation of emphasizing going to new markets is a good thing too, while making sure that you still nurture the core fan base. Just because racing, I think, is a really good sport to where it's not necessarily limited by it's co-ed. Obviously it's not limited by your size or strength or anything like that. It's really just matched by the quality of the vehicles and cars, and so that way anybody can do it, anybody can be a part of it. And so I think that just creates the opportunity to have it be in multiple different areas. So I think continuing to have activations in city areas to get racing out to the masses, and also just continue to work on having as legit of a product as possible and not kind of trying to be gimmicky and following other sports.
Got it. My last question for you is what advice would you give to aspiring racers or anyone like you who wanted to get into racing but doesn't necessarily live near a track?
I would say because that was my reality growing up. My advice would be to just try to find your nearest racetrack. For me, Richmond was 2.5 hours away. Dover was 2 hours away. Pocono was 2.5, 3 hours. So to find that nearest racetrack, whether it's a NASCAR track, a dirt track, a road course, and to be present, and one, be a fan, but also if you want to be a driver, start having business cards or an elevator pitch to make yourself friendly with whether it's team managers, um, PR members, actual drivers, people that work in the sanctioning body at those specific venues, just to put a name with a face and to keep showing up, because that's what I did. And it's important to keep showing up because people will know who you are and that you're serious about, trying to make a career.
Thank you so much for your time, Raja. I greatly appreciated this conversation. I hope that you continue to have great success in NASCAR and that you're going to, continue to be successful in the playoffs this year, and good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jordan.